Hi, and welcome to the first official episode of FYI I Am Damaged. I'm here with Anamiledys, a licensed clinical social worker, and let's get this going. Hey,
Hi.
how's it going? Thank you again for basically being the guinea pig of the first official interview for the podcast. Can you please introduce yourself? What do you do and who you are, and give everybody a, a very say hello.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I'm so excited that you're starting this. I think it's just such a beautiful thing, and as far as like creating community and getting into mental health issues, and we'll talk more about that. But to introduce myself, my name is Anamiledys. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been working in the field for over 15 years. Very passionate about this work. I like to hear folks' story. I'm also a person that has gone through a lot and healed, and now I'm helping people in their healing journey. Um, so as currently I work as a therapist. I've been doing that work for about 4 years. But before that, I've done like community organizing and other social work and clinical work.
Well, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
And and um, what's the word they say? To put everything on the table, like full disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Anna for short, is my sister-in-law, and we've known each other for over 10 years, and you know, and she's very much involved in um, helping me with the podcast, and I'm great. And we did our pre-interview, and if you haven't listened to the intro, I want to explore the various strengths of people who, after they've gone through their trauma on whatever level it may be, people knowingly and unknowingly develop their strengths from it. This is something we've discussed in our pre-interview, and it gives them power. It gets them moving. And with that intro interview, it was emotional for me going forward. And even though I did it on the fly, and this is all raw, and it'll get a little bit polished down the road, but that's how life is. And I want to delve into the mental strength of a person, and their experiences. And it's not about, reliving, revisiting, or exploring the trauma. There's enough of those out there about what people go through. What I'm focusing on is, the good aftermath of those that develop their strengths from it. And, the strengths that are born from these, traumatic ripples that just make us stronger in life and make us put one foot in front of the other because we're not going to give up. And, we've discussed, many points coming through here and all the stuff you've experienced. And I mean, in the stuff that you've dealt with, what's a couple of things that stick out from people who you're working through everything they've been through, the strength part of it? Like, how is it seeing them progress and get a little stronger and stronger as they deal with exposing not exposing, but getting their issues across to you?
Right.
And, coming to you being big enough, because that's the thing in our community, is that it takes a while to get that stigma off. Like, if you see a therapist, that there's something wrong with you, and that's completely not the case.
Right. Right. I think actually, I honestly am a believer that everyone should be in therapy because we all go through things that may be difficult. And sometimes it's good to have somebody that can listen and process, and talking things out loud. You yourself can figure out what's best for you. So I think what's interesting about all this healing journey is that's also very individual to the person. It's very interesting because when we were talking about the podcast, I thought it would be like an amazing idea because I get to listen to people on the daily and I see how much one person experience kind of relates to what another person is going through. And sometimes we think that we're very much isolated in our pain and in our journey to heal. And a lot of other folks having similar journeys. And I feel sometimes if folks would listen to that, they would feel less isolated. They would feel like, wow, I can really do this. Maybe I do have the strength. Maybe I need to try this approach. Sometimes a person would need an individual approach, and that comes out also in therapy. So I think it's a very important thing. Full disclosure, all therapists usually see their own therapist, because sometimes we develop also secondary trauma.
Right.
But when I went through that journey, and I'm still going through that journey, it's just been very eye-opening, awakening. Every year I learn a little new thing about myself that I need to change, that I can alter, that can improve my lifestyle, and it has.
Now, with you bringing that point up about a therapist seeing a therapist, and those that have touched on seeing therapists kind of know that if they dive into what the process is, and if people don't, then now they do.
Mm-hmm.
But is there a time where you basically have to check in when you see another therapist, or, which is kind of curious to me, or you feel like the cup the cup is runneth over, almost there,
right,
and you need to see that therapist? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah. So I've been in both situations where when I was going through a lot, I felt like I needed that extra support. And just went and saw a therapist in that way. This was before I was working full-time as a therapist. As a full-time therapist, we are almost like mandated to have clinical supervision, because we are going to constantly be affected by some of the stories that we hear. So before it gets to that point, we're constantly doing the work, which is also very much effective. I mean, I think whatever it takes people to go to therapy, maybe it's like it's the breaking point, or you just want to continue the process. It's
Right.
good. I think it always helps to have someone there to really like process things with, draw some patterns that you may be having. And the stigma comes from culture. At least for us, it's very cultural. It's like you don't want to be seen like a crazy person, quote unquote.
Right.
But us therapists, we have a running joke that we always feel that the people that show up to therapy are the people who are not that, who have some form of insight, right? And usually the person that has a lot of issues,
Right.
like 10 people come to therapy because they're dealing with that person who refuses to go to therapy, And so it's very interesting. And then like having to work around this person who's unwilling to see. So it's actually the total opposite. Usually people that come to therapy are people who are insightful, who are ready to do the work, who realize that, the way, see some patterns and things that they want to change, and just need a little bit of a professional help to do that.
Oh, that's great. And you were insanely supportive. Everybody's been that I've touched on to give me their opinion on me starting this, because it's for people who are doing this in the beginning. And if you can do it, as long as you hit it with a rational mind and you put your both 3 feet forward, if you got it, it's a little nerve wracking. And everybody wants to be, when they're starting something, to be unique. They don't want to just be, a copy of something. And, what I wanted to ask is, when I first approached you and you heard my intro, what were your first impressions?
Well, I thought it was amazing. I mean, I know a little bit about your story. So I think that it's also good to use, we call this sublimation as a coping mechanism, where we use our trauma and we really create something beautiful out of it. And I think that that's what you're doing. And you're highlighting folks' story. I know some people are going to be like professionals, and others are going to be like, just everyone, right? Family members, everyone, because everyone has a story. Everyone should have that space to process and to tell their story. I think there's healing in telling a story. So I thought it was just like such an amazing idea that you would create this platform for folks, to really express and talk about their traumas, but also mainly talk about their strengths and what helped them. And then other people can use that or get ideas. So it's a way of like healing, like you're creating a healing community, you're doing therapist work. And it's just amazing. And who else but to do it with someone that has, experienced some things, learned some things, been in treatment. Like, you're about the work, and I love that.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, it occurred to me when I was doing the intro that, it's not one size fits all. Everybody thinks it is. Everybody who comes with an idea thinks that it'll not save the world, but help the world. And, I'm not going to be disappointed if it just helps a handful of people. Like, that's not my goal. It's just, if I put it out on the table and, like I said, just a helpful buffet of stuff, you guys, I'm the table. You guys are the cooks. And what you bring to the table and whatever anybody can serve for themselves, and it'll help them, it'll nourish them, it'll make them stronger. That's basically the goal. I ran through my head in all sorts of different ways. And, I came to the point, and we discussed, like, this is a passion project now. It's, something, but it's insanely nerve wracking. And if you got a good idea, you got the right people backing you, and all that other stuff. What I tell people is, if you have something and you think is good, try it. And if it's golden, you're good. But moving forward, it's the drawbacks. Mm-hmm. Like, if you've seen a person through your experiences and through your practice, you've helped them move forward. Mm-hmm. And then you see a drawback. What do you experience without, of course, you have your oath as a social worker. If there is an oath, or just something that you have to, without going into super specifics, just the situations. Like, you see somebody making progress, and all of a sudden, 3 steps forward, 5 steps back, and you're like, wow, what the hell happened?
Right. So that is very common. And I always tell that to my clients, like, we have developed things that we have years, right, of learning one way of being that we now notice doesn't work for us. It's not going to be from one day to another that we're going to change. So that is part of the journey where you're making progress. And then sometimes you stumble against a wall, and then you'll make progress again. And sometimes it's about thinking back about the times where you were struggling and what helped you to get through, or even realizing that you got through that to make you a little bit more hopeful, where, like, I'm having a difficult time, but maybe I'm also on the brink of a breakthrough. Because sometimes those are the moments that really create a breakthrough, that really push us to learn new ways of coping and new things of doing. I mean, throughout my life, I've had to do that myself. So I understand the process within itself. It's an individual process, but it's really not that individual. There's commonalities, and, like, sometimes the things that we struggle for are the things that also then helped us create a strength. Right. That we've carried now even years later. And then there's, like, another more obstacle, and then you learn, you level up each time. And
we'll definitely touch on certain experiences that you may have dealt with. And, I want to get, I figure this as a diamond, we're going to get all facets, whether it's clean, dirty, shiny, dull, whatever, it doesn't matter. And if you're willing to share, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Do you feel, in a sense, you're a de facto person that people go to as friend-wise? Mm-hmm. Have you been able to help your friends go through their issues, or at least they say, hey, let me just bounce something off of you, as like an indirect way of, like, look, I'm going through something. Right. And, you're a friend. And it's more of a confidence, but also seeking something with a slice of professionalism in it. Right. So it's funny you asked that, because I'm actually journeying through that right now. Mm-hmm. I've helped a lot of I am that person that a lot of friends come to for advice. Just, as they should. Thank you. I mean, to hear what I have, what I think. And before, I was in the fashion of doing that, of, like, giving advice and, like, trying to help the person through. And now I'm realizing that, I need to look at people more with the
therapist eyes I do sometimes for a lot of my clients, where it's like, I don't need to make the decision for you. I need to realize that you're an empowered person that can make decisions on your own, and just let you also just talk it through yourself to help you with the indecision, instead of becoming this person that you depend on for advice and to work things out. Because as long as you're doing what Anna said that I should be doing, you're never really listening to what really works for you. You know, I can hear your story, but I don't walk your story every day. You do. So I do think that there's like a disempowerment that was happening when I was giving people like advice, or like just seeing them through, or be very direct with how I feel. Like, I think this was wrong, and you know, it's still loaded with my own judgment, right? And I'm not giving the person really the space to really work it out. So sometimes now I do that with friends, where I'm just like a listening ear. You know, I'm seeing them figure it out. I ask them little probing questions without offering my opinion or judgment. And that's something I'm doing because I'm doing my own ego work. So it helps me. And I feel like it has helped me in so many of my relationships since doing that.
That's great. And I'm sure you've encountered the just tell me what works, like tell me what to do. And you know, it's then people slowly come to the realization, like, shit, why would I ask them to tell me what to do when I finally realize something? And then it's just like a lock unlocking, and then it's like, whoa, let me work on this, let me do that. Like, does that come through a lot when people who don't have that, either they've never seen a therapist, they've never sought out help, or they just don't get it, that it's not about telling me how, don't tell me how to heal type of deal.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think which is why I love the podcast. Like, we're really honing in on people's strengths. And we're holding in on people's strengths. So it's like a really strength-based way of looking at it. Like, I'm not special, y'all. Like, I'm not special. I'm a person like you that had to figure it out.
So you think.
No. And I think that that everyone has that. Everyone has the ability to be their own inner therapist. I mean, ideally, we want to be in a position where there's no therapist needed, where the person can really just like hone into themselves about what is the best way to move. So I had to do that journey on my own. So I respect people going through that journey too, because what worked for me might not work for someone else. It might, but it might not. And so I want to, again, I don't even empower people, right? Because I don't have that kind of power. But I just want folks to feel like they can, you know, they can really figure it out for themselves.
But I'd say this though, and you have it, but you know, a kind person with insightful words is very powerful.
Yeah.
You know, so I hope you realize that, because you have that. I've seen that in you, and you've developed that. And you always want to get to, especially when there's a mental health issue, you always want to get to the meat of it.
Right.
You know, so you're very eager to help, and you know, you've done that before, and you know, I commend you on that.
Thank you.
And as a, you know, licensed clinical social worker, if somebody's, you know, seeking peace of mind, but not necessarily want to go through a full session, what would you like tell a person? Is there something that is your go-to to say, hey, you know, you're going through this, then, you know, do this, or I feel this, and see if it vibes with you, you know, if it's on your level, you agree with it, and then explore it. Is there anything you basically sort of like the quick and not quick, the quick and clean, say, hey, try this and see what's up, and if you know you want to talk, then if not, then you know, good luck on exploring and you know, helping yourself.
Right. So there are a few things. There's a few things that I've learned throughout my career that helps. And what's good about me is I'm a person that's a doer. I'm not going to recommend something to someone that I'm not going to try myself. So these are things that therapists do and suggest, and people who are in therapy probably already have heard the therapist suggest these things. But to me, I mean, it really has worked for my clients, and it really has worked for me. One of the things that I do often is meditation. Just in especially if you're dealing with anxiety, taking the time and a moment to just breathe and focus on your breath, and you're disrupting all these like thoughts, these problematic thoughts that are causing you to feel the anxiety for like a brief second, can automatically make you feel good and stop a panic. So meditation just gives you also this like form of peace and intuition. At first, y'all, I'm going to be real, it's hard. You're thinking about 20 million things. Am I doing this thing right? Really just trust the process. Before you know it, a week in, you're like, oh, okay, I feel a little different. So meditation is one of them. Journaling is very, very important. You know, a lot of my clients come to me and speak to me and hear their voices talk, and then they try to figure things out just by virtue of that. Right. But you only do that like once a week or bi-weekly, right? So like journaling is another form, right? To do free form, you know, no obligation, no one's grading you, no one's telling you what to write, just anything that's coming to your head that you're analyzing, write it down. You'll see that the thoughts will flow, and then you'll also make connections into your pattern. So this is the way that you can become your own little therapist.
I definitely recommend the writing down. That helps me a lot. If you're a good typer, people think physically writing it down with a pen is more, and I'm all for the organic, but I type 70 words a minute. I think really fast. I think in a compound way, and you know, luckily with learning how to type, and I'm telling you, people, learn to type. It is a blessing in disguise, especially if you're a person filled to the brim with thoughts, ideas, and everything. You get things out so much faster. But yeah, I do that. I mean, you've seen some of the stuff that I've written to my wife and all that other stuff, or just written to you, and how concise it is, how clean it is, and everything. And that backspace works amazingly. And I'm a crappy speller, you know, that too. So it does help. And so
and no pressure, right? Like they also write. You can free write, handwrite. Really, you just want to get the emotions on the page.
And you said meditation. What is there something specific with the meditation? Is there a certain type of meditation? Is there what do you suggest? Because if somebody types in, they hear this, they said, you know what, I'm going to give meditation a shot. I mean, what do you recommend so that they have at least a point of origin to start?
Right. So there's a lot of practitioners that do that, right? But you can actually do it in the comfort of your own home. You can go on YouTube, you can search meditations and do it. This is not a plug. I'm not being paid for Calm, but the Calm app is really, really good, really, because it's more guided to what you're going through. So they have, like if you're going through a relationship issue, they have meditation center on that. Okay. So there's someone that's giving you positive affirmation while you're meditating, also speaking to you about concepts and relationships, things that will make you think and analyze a little bit about your situation, like meditate on it. So it's a little bit more guided in that way. Okay. If you're having trouble at work, there's a whole 7 days of like relationships with things that happen with work and like ways of looking at it. So I think that's always a good starting point. I have recommended to a few of my clients and they really do enjoy it.
Cool.
While we're on the topic of things, I don't want to forget to mention, this is really important, to also do a gratitude journal. That is very helpful for the following reason.
Interesting. So, break it down.
I think that we are, and I think science has taught us too, that we are conditioned to look at problems because we constantly want to survive. So sometimes when we develop anxiety, it's almost like a really natural thing to do. Right? You're thinking about constant survival, so you're constantly scanning for problems. So what happens is that that then becomes our autopilot. Our autopilot is to always look at what the potential problem would be. And so people tend not to feel good, right? Because now you're like super nervous and I have to do this and I have to do that. And gratitude is a way to bring stuff back, right? So instead of scanning for problems, you're scanning in your day-to-day what you're grateful for. Like I'm grateful for being, sitting here, being able to talk to you. You guys prepared me a beautiful, wonderful drink. I get to enjoy it and savor it. Like now I do the little things, but when I started, it was the big things. Like I am grateful that I have a job, that I'm able to provide for myself, that I'm not in a position that I was when I was growing up, where I was going through a lot of heartache, or, that I have a husband, that that I'm able to, so little things like that. So what happens is that the more you do it, the more you start to scan the good things in your day.
Right.
So your mood starts to change. Everything's tied. Your feelings are tied to the way that you think and how you behave. So this is just a way to, feel good on the day to day. You behave a different way.
That's right. You
start thinking differently.
Absolutely right. Because even though some people might think, it's a sort of like, it is a oftenly overused, simplified way of describing it, is just it would always be said, you could have had it worse, or it could be worse. But when you're young, you don't want to hear that. Right. You go through a whole bunch of stuff. It's like, don't tell me that. I don't want to hear that. I'm in the now.
Yeah.
And if they are around long enough, and this is another thing I want to stress, is that if you're going through a stressful moment, do not plan a permanent solution to a temporary problem. What that means is suicide is not an option.
Right.
I want to, a lot of people have been in that space, and those that didn't get comfortable and stayed in that space know that finally realize, yeah, that wasn't an option, and that was a stupid road to travel. Because they grow out of it. They understand that, I have something better now, and I'm glad that I never took that leap and did something that, you leave a whole lot of pain in your wake.
Right.
So it is true. It could be worse. And when you get older, you see that. Unfortunately, you'll see friends and family members who didn't do better for themselves for whatever reason. Could have been for whatever. I'm not really worried about getting into it, but you see how when you do better for yourself, you do better for your children, you do better for your family, and you see like, wow, how did I do better? And then you see those hidden strengths, those methods that your body subconsciously did to help you put one foot forward, to help you not stay stagnant, to help you understand that, there's more to it. Whether you rely on your faith, on yourself, I'm going to do better.
Right.
And what would you, so on the professional side, thank you for involving all of that. On a personal side, what do you consider your strength moments? What do you consider that, if it wasn't for this method, I either consciously or unconsciously developed, that strengthened my mind to help be the person that I am, and it just made me stronger for it. Like, are you conscious of those type of things?
Yeah. I mean, when you asked me to do the podcast and like to talk a little bit about like my personal story, I was thinking, I'm like, what are some like highlight moments, right? Each highlight moment for me that propelled this growth were moments where I also was like depressed, like in the brink of like just like going through a lot. One of the moments I think that are very significant in my life was growing up. Growing up was very hard. My mom was super abusive, verbally and physically. I didn't have like a really easy upbringing. My dad was very supportive, but my mom had this long history of trauma. She dealt with some, well, I guess I can say like there was like consensual stuff that happened to her when she was younger. So she never really trusted family members, which is typical for people who suffer some form of sexual trauma, that most of the times happen by a family member, somebody close. And so she never really even trusted her daughters. Like anything that we would do is, we did it on purpose. We were out to get her. So she would attack us.
Just like the lashing out type.
The lashing out.
Right.
And when growing up, I didn't understand that. It was a lot. It was a lot to grow up with. I was a very angry person. Like I'm not, a lot of people that know me in high school, they're like, you're the most evolved person I know. Because now I like sit in this place of zen. But when I was in high school, like had a really bad attitude and I was like really, really angry. so much so, like we're an immigrant family. Our father always wanted us to do really good in school. That was something that we took pride in. So no matter what was happening, how angry I was, how much I cursed people out, or like, was going through my turmoil, I always did good in school. Right. My sister, your wife, she's overachiever. She was like a valedictorian always. And so was my middle sister, valedictorian. So that's something that I really aspired to do.
So you figure that was one of your defense mechanisms?
I mean, it was, but it also created one of the most significant traumas. Okay. So that's what I'm getting at that. Okay. I try to achieve a lot. While I was in high school, going through these anger issues in school. And so I had actually made it where I was going to be like a salutatorian of my class. I was one of the higher ranked students. And then I had to deal with like the principal and the assistant principal letting me know, well, you did make this goal and we were going to let you do a speech, but because you have an attitude problem, where I'm not going, engage you in that. You're not going to do that. And to me, it was like one of the biggest injustices that I've dealt with, because this whole year I'm like experiencing a lot of abuse and a lot of things. And I'm thinking like, whatever, at least I have school. At least I'm doing good. And at least I'll get recognized and I'll make my dad proud, which is something that I was working for. And then they just take it away because you had an attitude problem. Granted, I had an attitude problem, but I was going through real shit. I used to go home. I used to go to school with bruises. Nobody asked me what was going on. Wow. Everybody just saw this angry kid who's intolerable, but nobody saw me as having a story.
And they figure you have the problem.
And they figure I have the problem, which is really what got me to be in the social work field. And sometimes I understand my clients, like that person that's on the train that's like, what the fuck you looking at? Like, I know what you're going through. You're like, it's such a deep pain that now you just don't care. You want to lash it out. You want to just say it. Because I used to come from that place. So I look at that person with a sense of compassion because I've been there. So that's why I thought I would be great for the field, So I took that moment of injustice and I just kind of flipped it on its head. And I said, okay, like, I don't like how this feels. I'm going to heal and I'm going to do, there's something to this, know. That was very significant. I went away to college. I was able to leave the space I was in. That sometimes is very important. People underestimate that there's healing that can happen, but sometimes you have to leave the place where you're being constantly triggered.
This feels like it was a weight.
It was a weight lifted off. I was able to then navigate the world without having to deal with like the abuse.
Well, that's good. It's that whole removal of yourself in a toxic environment that it stagnates somebody from actually doing for themselves. That I totally get, because where you were having, with my trauma and my issues, it happened and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was happening until I got older, and I'm like, oh shit, this happened. And that totally flipped me on my head. But that, being in the hood, living in the South Bronx, and, there wasn't an option for me to go, it's just push through it to the point, like, ignore it until you can't. And then the measure of yourself comes out with how do you deal with it.
Right. And I kind of want to acknowledge that, because I had that, right? Like, I've experienced that abuse for a very long time. I got to leave, but there was a point where I was stuck. I couldn't leave this abuse.
How you felt stuck?
Huh?
Sorry, how did you feel stuck?
Like stuck. Like I had to work around and walk on eggshells and like learn how to cope with the fact that this is where I live. This is who my mother is. She's not going to change. And so I can't immediately leave. I'm 14 years old, right? So like, what can I do?
Oh, prior to going to college.
Prior to going to college. Gotcha. And I do this to my clients too, that sometimes are in positions where they feel stuck and can't leave. But what can we do to make the situation a little comfortable?
Right.
What I had done for myself was that I always worked. As soon as I got to 16, I threw myself into working after school, and I hardly spent any time at home. Granted, now I'm a person that's always doing 20 million things. And I think it stems from that, right? The coping mechanisms that I had when I was younger don't work as much as when I'm an adult. That's something else you process.
Yeah, the energy goes out the window.
Right. But yeah, it's sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's like seeing what I can do to get myself comfortable. I sometimes feel like people don't know their strengths. Sometimes they do things that can make the situation better without them even realizing.
Yeah, I've noticed that happens with me. It's like sometimes you're almost on autopilot, and you don't realize that, oh, I've did all this, and how, and they don't realize it. They don't. It's a pain. It's that type of pain they're not used to get in themselves, to get in their own heads,
right?
To realize that, this is what happened to me. This is what I've been through, and how am I still here? And to peel back those layers to get to that, little gem that says, because you did this, because you worked on that strength, wow, this is why I'm here.
Right.
And that's one of the things I'm trying to pull out of people, to realize that, oh, I was able to do this. I was able, like you said, you focused, you basically directed your ship in another path,
right,
which helped you. I don't want to say ignore it, but it kind of gave you a relief,
an outlet. Yeah, everywhere, every single time I saw myself in this form of like
breather,
depression. Yeah, there was something that that helped me have like a breather. Another technique, and I guess this is also helpful for people trying to heal, that helped me was psychoeducation. I went into getting my master's, and in it, I learned so much about the behavior that my mom had. Because for sometimes I blamed her for my issues, like, I am this way because she did this to me. How can she do this to me? And like, you can very much get caught up in that. And it's good. Sometimes you do need to name it, right? But if you constantly living with that, you constantly live in the sadness and the anger, you're bringing it into your present. It wasn't until I understood a little bit about why she reacted the way that she did that I was able to see her more with compassionate eyes, not taking the responsibility or taking away that she did that.
Right.
That's very real, and that did happen.
Right.
But, I have, in some ways, it's like I had to let it go, right? Like, it's something that, she tried within her capacity.
Right.
And understanding that and getting psychoeducated on her disorder, what's going on with her, really, really helped me.
Okay.
So psychoeducation sometimes really helps a client, like understanding, like, this is why people act the way this is where it comes from. Right. It's not excusing what they did, but, this is why we have almost like to learn to let it go.
And it's great that people need to know, even the smallest amount of mental health education works. It's, hey, look, you're born. And so this is most likely, I would compare it to like a mental birth, where you come out of it, you crawl, you walk, and then you start running. And everybody feels good after they run. If you run, then that's great. If you do other things, then that's great. Your mental exercises is just like a physical exercise. After a while, it is more beneficial, regardless of how you feel afterwards. I've done a lot of introspective stuff about what I've been through, how I am as a person, and it is exhausting. That mental exhaustion is no joke, but that's a turnoff to people. And, my opinion is that, look, push through it. I'll be honest, I'd rather exhaust myself through mentally figuring out what's going on than hitting the Stairmaster. Because once you get your mental health in order, then if you want to work on your physical, you do that. It's, get your mental core right as best as you can, and then work on everything else. If that's your path.
And sometimes it's like I told you, sometimes it's not this or that. Like actually doing physical exercise can improve your mental health as well.
But there's that motivation is not there, because they're all like, oh God, I want to do this, or why this and this and that. Fuck that, I'm not working out. But you're absolutely right. It's the endorphins that come out and everything else physical that comes out of it. Yes, it does help the mental space that you're in.
You said something key. The motivation is not there. And the reason the motivation is not there is because we have driven ourselves with our thoughts into a paralyzing space. Like our thoughts are very powerful. We can really get into that very paralyzing space by really reflecting, damn, that was really fucked up what they did to me. And how dare they? And we have to go through that process. So I welcome that process. I don't want it to be like, okay, just be positive. That's not what it is at all. Yes, acknowledge that it is fucked up. And, you know, how can then we turn that around and like focus on something else or do something, even if it's like, all right, I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to kind of push myself to work out. Before you know it, you feel a little bit better because you didn't sit there and soak for so many hours. Soak a little bit, allow yourself to feel, but don't stay in that moment, you know, like, you know, invite your feelings, but don't serve them tea. Don't let them stay. Right.
Don't fear it. You know, fear can, like you said, there's paralyzing factors, and you know, fear is one of them. And people fear, they don't think, you're not born with dissecting who you are as a person.
Right.
And you know, one of the best things I do is you know, just keep pushing through it. You know, who is it? The rapper, Nas, who you like as well. You know, he basically was giving advice which has stuck with me. He's like, oh, you know, all these young artists want to put out good music and great music, want to put out classics, and he's like, you know, fuck that, just put out music, just put it out. Doesn't matter. You don't. What are you waiting for the right moment to hit? You never know what the right moment is, and that goes with how you're thinking. Is just you do it. My wife, she's like, oh my God, you're amazing with your words. You're, you know, when you write, and I'm more articulate when I write because I take time with it. I edit it. I go back. I'm thinking, and one thing is I like doing it.
Right.
And you know, I hit more with words on paper than I do verbally. You know, and to me, I tell people it's an exercise. It's an exercise. You're not going to get good at it if you don't keep pursuing it. There's going to be a lot of crap before you hit that nice little diamond that you're going to be like, wow, like that I'm proud of. And oh, look at all this crap, you know, that I did before it. But it's an exercise.
That's everybody's journey. Enjoy. I mean, like, embrace the fact that there's going to be this crappy stage. We all have to go through that, not only in our profession, but also in our healing.
Always.
You know, it's not going to be like from one day to another, I didn't arrive at this place. I had many like crappy moments where I thought I was really acting in my best interest and then realized that I wasn't. But like, I needed to also go through that to arrive at a better place. And so like, that's just how life flows and how it goes. And you can draw many examples in life about that. One thing that I do tell my clients is that draw examples of your strength, what helped you in the moment. That can really help identify what is unique to you for when it comes to healing. Like, I did want to share my last experience because I want to give a shout out to my sister Advania. So like my last experience where I felt like it had a really big breakthrough. I'm constantly feel like I'm going through breakthroughs, but like one of the most monumental ones was like dealing with a breakup of like this like relationship. A lot of folks I feel like go through this where you have that really serious relationship, that person that you love, you become super enmeshed, it becomes very codependent. So when the person leaves, you feel like your whole world shattered because that person was your world, right? We all kind of been there. So it's a very normal thing, which this is why I'm sharing it. Cause like y'all, yes, everyone goes through it. So I was going through that breakup. I was super depressed. And the reason I want to give my sister Alania a shout out was because she told me, she's like, you know, get up, stop like just soaking, like go take a salsa class, go out and dance, go do it. And I had no motivation. I just wanted to sleep and eat ice cream all day. And then one day I just got fed up with me. And I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to go. I'm going to see how it is. And I went. And the first day it was just like, and then I pushed myself for a second day. And then I started feeling better slowly. And salsa, you know, doing something physical, being in community really got me out of that funk.
Yeah, you knocked it out. All seeing you posting up the videos, and we actually saw you. I think we saw you in person. I don't recall when. Performing, and if I didn't say it before, you knocked it out the park. You were insanely good,
right,
to say the least.
Thank you. Yeah, so no, I like there's value in that. You know, I always value that my sister gave me that little push. And then I kept on with it and I stayed committed, and like that really created so many things for me. Like being in that world, like it physically, it got me in shape. Mentally, it got me really happy. I met my husband through the scene. It's like something that like helped me like really propel this kind of life that I have. But, you know, when I think about those monumental, like those moments, I think about how like family was very hurtful to me, but also family helped me with my healing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you know, reframing and learning.
No, I love that quote. I love that quote. You know, you love your family, but sometimes you just don't like them.
Yeah,
you know?
no, and that's okay. And sometimes you need the space. I think if I didn't have the space away, I wouldn't see them the way that I see them now.
Right. And everybody's older. Everybody's more mature. Everybody's more living through their experiences. And, you know, you answered my last question, because it's like, you know, it was basically what was one of your strengths and what was the trigger to make that realization. And I get that, because it's like, if you sit there, you're staring at the four walls in your room and you're not doing anything, you're sulking, and just something snaps, and it's like, this shit ain't me.
Yeah.
This shit ain't me.
Yeah.
And people need to realize that, like, if this is not you, and you, like you said, you got to dive into those feelings. You have to feel it. Somebody just can't tell you at the moment that, hey, you know, fuck that, move on, this, and you have to be ready.
Right.
And it was a good, I guess, you heard the words while you were right at the cusp of being like, fuck it, this ain't me. And that was a good kick in the ass, like, get up, do something. And you were ready for that.
Right.
Which is, you know, which is great, which is what I hope more people go through. Because once you realize that, you're like, fuck that, then, you know, what am I going to do? Then you're breaking it down. Then you get more introspective, because people, they build through their experiences, and they become more mature through their experiences, positive or negative, and more negative than not. And one thing I wanted to touch on is that people need to realize, if everybody has this type of expectation of that everything needs to be 100%, never heard the term, you know, hey, there's peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever heard that. And understand, everybody, if you're going through something and, you know, you're high on the hog, you're good, you think it's going to be like that, and then something just steps on your head and you're in your low moment, it's normal. It's normal. You'll swing back up, because something else is on the bend that will pull you down, and you swing back up.
Right.
Live in those moments. Learn from the down. Enjoy the ups.
Right. And you have a world, you have so many examples to draw from. And that's something that we do in therapy, because you got into this place, but I'm for sure know that you've been in a very difficult spot, and somehow you got yourself out of it. And so, like, sometimes it's brainstorming what worked for you, and knowing, and you know, that, yes, FYI, I'm damaged, but I'm going to be okay, because I have been okay to, you know, I've made it. I haven't let myself go.
That's
right. So there's more strength there than I realized.
Good. And that's what I'm hoping people realize. That's one of my defining missions of this. It's, you know, not to be popular, but if, you know, helping is help. And just, guys, realize that it's, you know, figure out your path. You don't have to follow somebody else's path. You know, I want to be the table that serves up these lessons, and you pick and choose what you want, what you think can help. And if it doesn't help, find something else. That doesn't help, find something else. You know, you have to figure out, you know, you don't have to shove a square peg in a round hole. You can just find your round peg, and, you know, it'll connect. You'll find it, but you're not going to find it if you don't look for it.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, let me see what I got here. If someone is not introspective, you know, what are the baby steps they can go about, you know, to start this journey, what we discussed? I mean, you said the meditation. Is there anything that you didn't touch on to say that, you know, this, you know, you can do the physical, you can be introspective, you can do meditation. Is there anything else?
Well, I think, at least for me, the little things I had to realize is, like, I'm always just doing my best in the moment. So not being so hard on myself, right? Like some of you may be listening and it's like, yeah, I know you're telling me to look, but it's like, I can't find it and I'm just no good. And, you know, this kind of negativistic attitude, which we all have. And like it's autopilot. It's just by virtue of our conditioning. So trust me, you're just doing your best in the moment and telling yourself that. Like even people that are dealing with guilt with stuff that they did in the past, you were doing the best that you knew at the time. You know, if you cause harm, it's good to acknowledge that you cause harm and make amends with that person if possible. But you know, you tried, you're working through it and you were trying your best at the time. So sometimes I have to remind myself of that so I don't feel so, you know, like, oh my God, I did this. I was so nasty to this person and I was like the worst person ever. And sometimes acknowledging like, yeah, that was not cool behavior and like I was not in a good space and I reacted like that and I shouldn't, you know, apologize to such and such when I was in my selfish stage. But, you know, I was just doing my best in the moment and like moving on. Right. And just knowing, like really saying I learned the lesson, so I won't do it again.
Right.
You know, but yeah, there's a lot of things like that. Sometimes it helps to have the therapist to process that.
Yeah.
And to help you also make amends and knowing sometimes you can make amends with the people that you've hurt.
It's not, guys, it's not weakness to apologize.
Right.
It is not weakness to apologize.
Right.
If you know the person, even if the person isn't receptive to what you want to say because they've been hurt by you, and that kind of rolls into my question about what you shouldn't do, like lashing out. But, you know, that's one of the things I feel, in my opinion, you shouldn't do is lash out. But it happens. People are in the moment and they react in certain ways that is not conducive to healing. But again, it's not negative. It's not weakness to apologize. That's actually a strength.
Yeah. And you do it for you. You're not even really doing it for the person. Forgiveness,
Right.
I mean, as corny as it sounds, it's true. Forgiveness is not for the other person as much as it is for you.
Right.
Because you let it go in that moment. And you say, I'm not gonna hold it. I'm not gonna keep blaming this person.
And
you know?
teach them a lesson.
And you teach them a lesson. Yeah, exactly. Another thing that I really and want to like hone in, that I see a lot of therapists do that I don't agree with. And this is like in my line of work and why I don't give advice. It's like, you really don't help people by telling them what to do.
Right.
You really do help people by being the example.
Right.
Right. So if I want you to learn how to be a compassionate person, because I think that would help you, I'm not going to tell you be more compassionate. I'm going to show you what compassion looks like. Right. I want to show you that it's possible that somebody can hurt you and that you could be like, all right, I'm not going to punish this person forever for something they did in the moment when they weren't feeling good. Right. So like, I can still give you loving kindness and wish you the best, even if you hurt me in that moment and then letting it go. But, you know, in that moment, I am showing compassion for that person, but that helps me then build compassion for myself.
Right.
And so acting it, you know, being the example, you know, someone can see how I move and be like, I like how she moves. And then feel more inspired to do it than if I were to tell them, just have compassion for this person that hurt you. Like, you know, so.
And people.
There's value in that.
And even if somebody, you know, you got a lot of comedians out there. If they say, you know, oh, so you're that, you know, annoying positive person or whatever. No, fuck that. You know, not at all. Because, you know, then you be that person because you know what? There's a sort of, and even though it shouldn't be there, but regardless, you can't stop it. There's a little envious, like, oh, I wish I can do that. Then it's like, you know what, motherfucker, then work towards it and be that type of person because you're not born with it. It's practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice.
And reflective. I mean, I like that you said that, like the envy stuff. That comes up sometimes when people are like, think about this, because I've had this happen to me. And now as a psychoanalyst, I'm like, yeah, that's where it's coming from. When you ever look at somebody, you're like, this person is just bragging. Think about that. Really, it's not about the person. What is it about that thinks that this person is bragging? What do you have going on? What is happening with you?
Most likely
how are you coping? Yeah, like bring it back to yourself, because every single time projection is the biggest coping mechanism. And sometimes I do that. Sometimes I'm just like, I can't stand that such and such does that. And I tell my husband, baby, do I do that? He's like, yeah, you do that. So it's something that reflects. I'm like, oh shit, that's why. I'm projecting a very common coping mechanism. So that's another way that you can start to pinpoint your own behavior. Mm-hmm. If you hate that such and such, this and this, that's a chismosa, I can't stand it. It's like, was there a period you were a chismosa? Is that really triggering a past person that you didn't like? Or are you doing it right now? Like, this is the thing. For
non-Spanish listeners, chismosa means?
A gossiper.
There you go.
Gossiper, judgmental. So a lot of people that get to my space of like, we teach everybody with loving kindness, they also get in this like very, I don't want to say like holier than thou space where like, I don't judge, I don't gossip, that's also being fed by the ego. I mean, it's good that you don't do that, right, but you can't be annoyed when people are still going through that journey.
Yeah, exactly. Right? It's part of it. And, if there's a fall from that and then they learn from that, and then if you see somebody's journey, it's not to be envious, is to you can use it as a template if you're not the type of person that you can create something like that yet. Right. You can, there's nothing wrong with seeing somebody as an example for yourself and then developing your own. It's very rare for somebody to be, their own creator. There's something, there isn't fire without a spark.
Right.
If there's a self spark, then that person could be very special in certain ways, not in everything. Mm-hmm. But for a person to spark their own fire, that spark has to come from something else.
Right.
So it's one of those things. And real quick, just touch on if a person is going through this. Mm-hmm. How do they come about to show and be an example for their kids? People who go through this have kids. Mm-hmm. You've been through it,
right,
but you've been through it with someone who very slowly healed themselves, and that's later on, decades later. Mm-hmm. But if somebody's in the now, they're young enough, they can hear this, and they have kids, and they're like, damn, I don't want to dump on them. I don't want to, dirty them with this. Like, what can they do?
It's funny you say that, because that is my main concentration. I work on generational trauma. I have a son now, but I've been working on being this person for my son since I had the idea of wanting to have a baby. Mm. So it really just starts with healing yourself. A lot of the stuff that triggers you, how you lash out at your kids, all that, it comes from like past pain that you have that's built up. Mm. So if you already have that kind of insight and motivation to want to change for your kids, trust me that you will. Okay. It just realize that it's going to be a journey, because you've learned a way of being for so long that it's not going to be from one day to another that you learn a new way of being.
I know that, yeah.
So having compassion for yourself, but really kind of doing the work. I really do recommend therapy. I do a lot of generational trauma work. So if you folks are interested, I do have a private practice. You can go to my Instagram called the Check-In Collective and reach out to me. And we can also process some things, do some behavior modification. Our kids also learn and are sponges of us. Mm-hmm. So by healing you heal them.
That's good. And you're linked up on my Instagram, guys. You can see that at one word, FYI, I am damaged. It's also linked up. It should be on the podcast page. And I completely second that, because, I'm a father of 3 boys, and it can be daunting, go through what I've been through. I've been, assaulted in the past, and it's something that I work through, and I'll, again, that'll all unfold. I'm more into focusing on doing for others rather than I'm in a sense, I'm good, just to get that across. And in being good in this certain space, it allowed me to want to help others, which is what this is for. And that's what I want to stress is I'm a father of 3 boys, and it hasn't been easy dealing with what I've been through and raising a child, let alone 3. And then you're raising boys. So you want to be able to raise men. I am the youngest of 3. Originally, in my close-knit family, I'm the youngest of 3, was mainly raised by my mother. So I always reflected on how can someone like me, who's been through what I've been through, raise a man.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I had to struggle with. And for those who listen to this, and even for a single mom listening to this, like, how can a woman raise a man? They're not in that space, and it can happen. Again, it's trial and error. Can't be too hard on them. And if you are, show them that there's power in forgiveness, in apologizing.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows them that, you know what, even though the world might not understand, or those in it know that, there's power in it. And they will realize that.
Mm-hmm.
And the people around them will realize that you were the bigger person.
Yeah.
And again, check out the page, check out our Instagrams. She's all linked up on the post. Anna, thank you very much for joining us. Any last words?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited for you. I think this is, like, again, healing in so many ways. By telling my story, I've in some way healed, and even talking it through, it's like, wow, I did that. And I know this is also doing that for you. So again, thank you so much. And thank you for creating the platform.
FYI, I'm damaged.
I'm damaged.